Hello and welcome back to the Final Straight F1 podcast. Again, with me, Ben and Tonda.
And today we're looking at the story of the 2024 Spanish Grand Prix.
And let's get into it. So, I think we need to start at qualifying, right? It's been pretty interesting right from the get-go. Looking at the Q1, Q2, Q3. What did you think of the whole qualifying? How did you live through it?
Well, as you said, it was interesting. It was cool seeing it was generally this weekend cool seeing Mercedes back in the mix. You know, we've talked about the Mercedes in the earlier episodes of this podcast, and we've been kind of shitting on them a little bit, saying that their upgrades don't really work. Hamilton is leaving, mismanagement, whatever. But it seems like the upgrades that they have, come up with are actually working, and they seem to be actually bringing the fight to the top 2 or 3 teams now. In comparison, Ferrari, of course, after Monaco, there are some big expectations for the season going forward. Some people were saying, some people were hoping, including me, that it was a sign of things to come. A title fight between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, as we saw at the start of 2022. But of course, the double DNF last weekend, and now P5 and P6, it was in qualifying and the race. Of course, there was some drama in between. But qualifying, it was interesting. Of course, Lando Norris getting his second pole position in his F1 career after Sochi 2021. Well, now we can say that he's not that great at converting poles to victories, but we just have to
0%.
Yeah, 0%. And we thought that Charles Leclerc has it bad, huh? But what did you think of qualifying?
I thought it was pretty interesting right from Q1 because you had the Ferrari struggling from the get-go.
Yeah.
You had... It was interesting. The Williams... I don't know. For some reason, I thought the Williams is not going to be that bad, in Spain, because they made their car more conventional, like compared to last year. It's not the straight line demon it used to be. It's just more balanced, and yet they just finished in a really bad spot again.
Yeah.
And yeah, even I think practice and qualifying, the incidents, with Stroll and Hamilton, and then it was Norris and Leclerc.
Oh, yeah.
It was very odd. It was in practice, obviously, but it was still quite odd to see, that, of course, like Hamilton, for example, he made the mistake of, he didn't see him, right? But he moved completely from the racing line after. And yet, like, Stroll just went into him and bumped into his wheels. And similar could be said about Leclerc, right? Like, it's, the drivers don't do it on purpose. And it's kind of strange. It just reminds me it gives me the vibes of Vettel in 2017 with Hamilton in Baku, right? Where, Hamilton was preparing his tires for his lap, his getaway. Vettel kind of forgot to brake, and he just bumped into Hamilton, and then he thought he brake tested him, and he drove alongside him and bumped into him just like bumper cars or something. And yeah, so that was already pretty interesting. I think both Stroll and Leclerc got a reprimand for this in the qualifying. We could see Norris and Verstappen talking about it later, that it was pretty ridiculous that they only got a reprimand and not a real penalty. But speaking of someone who also had a penalty coming and did a really bad job, even despite the penalty, was Sergio Perez.
That's true.
It was a terrible weekend from Sergio.
And this is the 3rd time in a row that we're saying this. And I was actually hopeful, I wished him good luck. And my prediction, we'll get to that at the end of the episode, of course, but I thought that he would end up on the podium. Well, that didn't happen. And yeah, again, well, he did qualify P8, so he did make it into Q3. But of course, with the penalty, then starting Q11, it wasn't the optimal, starting point for the race. And then he spent most of the race fighting with the midfield teams, trying to get back up there, fighting the Alpines. And yeah, it's really odd. I think it also kind of shines a light on the state of the Red Bull car right now, because of course there have been some people saying that the McLaren is actually faster than the Red Bull right now, and I think actually in Spain that was the case. In terms of tire deg, at the end, Lando, he finished, what was it, 2-3 seconds behind Max?
2.5, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it wasn't as close as Imola, but still, these, 2 more laps and he would have him. Or a couple more.
Yeah, I think the funny thing and the weird thing that completely just spun my head around was the fact that when we went into qualifying, right? I saw the speed trap, the speeds, right, in the speed trap. And I don't know if it was after Q1 or Q2, but Red Bulls were the slowest on the straight, which is something unheard of, for anyone watching for the past 2 years. The Red Bull has been by far the quickest car on the straight line. Maybe if you discount the Ferrari, but last year, but I think they just went with the lower, wings with lower downforce. But Red Bull actually went with a aggressive setup towards downforce. If you look at the analysis in turn 14, which is a very high speed corner, Red Bull was by far the quickest, and they were the only ones, I believe, that could take this corner just flat out. And funnily enough, Mercedes were one of the quickest, if not the quickest, on the straights. And I mean, it's also because of the choice of the rear wings. Like, before the weekend comes, the teams always bring different specs of the rear wings. Like, some of them are more loaded, which means they're going to produce more downforce, but they're going to cost you on the straight. And Mercedes went, contrary to Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari, who went with medium to high downforce wing, Mercedes went with the medium wing, which usually it was the opposite case. If you look at last year, they always needed a lot of downforce on the wing, and then they were slow on the straight. And seems they're confident. So as you were saying, we hailed them for kind of making progress, and it seems like they made a solid step forward. The rear of the car was pretty solid in the high-speed corners. The straight line, performance was very good. And the Red Bull, so even though the Red Bull had the biggest wing, the biggest, downforce, and probably the slowest on the straight, but who knows? Perez, because of that, he struggled to make any progress in the race because the car was slower on the straights. But then you have to always look, he was racing, Saubers, Haas's, and these kind of, teams. And when you look at Verstappen, he overtook Russell in a few laps.
And what a
which
overtake.
Is crazy. And let's just discuss the start, right? Lando Norris got pole position. Verstappen, Lando's lap was incredible. I didn't expect it at all. When Verstappen put that 11.4 or what was it, I thought it's game over.
Yeah.
But then Lando pulled up a masterpiece. Then, surprisingly, as you mentioned, the Mercedes 3 and 4, only 0.02 of a second in favor of Hamilton this time.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff. So,
and that's
the qualifying was interesting, yeah.
And Hamilton, hasn't been in front of George Russell very often in qualifying this year. I don't know the exact stats at the moment, but it was nice seeing him, back on the right track.
It was 8-1 in qualifying head-to-head and 7-2 or something like this in the race.
Yeah. Which
is, clearly shows how uncomfortable Hamilton was with the Mercedes. And this weekend, I think he had the pace over Russell, qualifying and race. He had the better tire wear and everything. And yeah, that was, and as you say, for people who don't know, Spain is a circuit where it just shows car performance. It used to be said a lot about, Spain being the best test track because you have some slow speed corners. Well, you used to in the third sector, now we don't. but you used to have a mix of the corners, and it used to be a test track for a reason. So we had a pretty good idea of the car performance whenever we got to Spain, and it seems like McLaren and Red Bull are pretty close match.
Yeah.
Ferrari, Mercedes, a little bit far off, which is surprising from Ferrari because there was a lot of expectation from the SF24 Evo model.
Exactly.
I don't know if it was the setup. If it was the setup or
it might have been
performance.
They went with a higher downforce setup, as far as I know, which
that's odd. That's very odd because I saw the analysis and they were the slowest out of the top teams in the high-speed corner of turn 14.
Yeah.
Which is
that's
odd.
It really,
that's very odd.
It really seems like there's still some potential to be unlocked, hopefully. Or on the other hand, they just haven't figured out how to properly use these upgrades. Because we saw that organizationally, like Ferrari have been doing quite well this year, of course, when in comparison to previous years. And they have been, at the start of the year, we have to remember, they were by far the clear second right after Red Bull. But yeah, now McLaren and Mercedes seem to have caught up. And Ferrari, they really need to work on their car. But actually, their chief designer, their technical director, was just announced that he's going to leave for Aston Martin in in the fall. But there's of course Loic Serra coming in from Mercedes, but still. Might be, rumors have it that, it has something to do with Adrian Newey possibly coming to Ferrari. That is still a big if. But Ferrari definitely needs to start figuring something out, because also tensions have been rising a bit between the two
it's been crazy.
Drivers of the Italian Scuderia. But yeah, we should talk about the start of the race, because of course Lando on pole, Max Verstappen lined up right next to him. They get off the line. Lando both of them have a good start, and then Lando kind of squeezes Max onto the grass a little bit. Then it was pretty funny in the post-race press conference. He was like, "Yeah, I left enough space. I think I left enough space." And both Verstappen and Hamilton, they kind of laughed at him. It can be a good feeling having two drivers with
it 10, says it all.
Yeah, with 10 world championships between them laughing at you. But oh well.
That is very true. And as you say, I think when Lando was having the start, when you looked at the lights out and the first phase, like there's always two phases. The initial phase is just the getaway. It's when the clutch bites in. When you let go of the clutch and how the wheels just dig into the ground. It's always a decision maker. But then you have the second phase of the start where the revs are starting to come up.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where Lando lost out to Verstappen a little bit, which was such a shame, because then he had to protect the inside. And, for some reason, I had this scenario in my head. Before the race, what's going to happen? I thought, Lando Norris is not going to have the best of the starts. Verstappen is going to have, a decent start, as he usually does, but I don't think it's one of his strengths, funnily enough. They're going to, squeeze each other on the inside, and then Hamilton is going to come around the outside because he's going to have the clean track. He's going to stomp on the brakes very late because it's gripped up and go around the outside. But guess who did that? Hamilton had a pretty terrible start, and we had George Russell getting the slipstream.
Russell,
gaining on the top speed and then sending a beauty around the outside, which was, that was unbelievable.
It really out of nowhere. And at that moment, I was like, whoa. I wasn't familiar with your game, George Russell, because I used to, I kind of go back and forth on George Russell in terms of whether I definitely think he's a good driver, but, I was a big fan when he was still back at Williams. But then in 2022, I don't know, the guy just kept crashing into everyone. And so I was like, yeah, okay. But every once in a while, he just pulls out a move like this. And you have to admit that was a beauty. Of course, then you saw the Ferrari drivers kind of. I think it was Charles Leclerc who also tried to get in there, but he was overtaken by George. Well, he was still in front of him. He was cut off by George Russell, and then just sends it around the outside. And I mean, he didn't keep the lead for very long, but you still have to give it.
It was incredible. I mean, you always are looking forward to the start at Spanish Grand Prix because we know the straight is long. We know the slipstream is gonna be playing an effect. We always know that the pole position, as great as it sounds, it's not always the biggest advantage because we know that the McLaren is not the fastest car on the straight. It still lacks a little bit. And the Mercedes had a solid top speed, so he just grabbed the slipstream like nothing else. He just moved out of the line. It looked like Lando didn't even notice, Russell.
Yeah.
And then he had an absolutely clean, like no hesitation at all, no crash, no conspiracy, no nothing. He just had an absolutely clean move around the outside.
He even left space. He even left space on the inside in case.
He even left space.
Anybody,
amazing.
would have a go.
And then, unfortunately, Lando lost out to Verstappen. We just saw Lando falling down from pole position to the third place. We saw Hamilton falling down. It looked like Leclerc is going to overtake Hamilton, but then he got him back somehow, which, the starts are always crazy. And I'm really like impressed that nobody crashed, like crashed. Contact is always there, but nobody really crashed intensely. So that was incredible because we then could see how it pans out, right? We had Russell, who was on this, like everyone was pretty much on the softs except of Albon, I believe. He was the only one starting on the mediums. And, because it costs you just so much. Like when you're starting on a different compound, if you're not starting on softs, it just costs you for, I don't know, if it's like 800 meters, it costs you like a few meters. It's like 5 meters difference. So it's pretty much a car length. So if Verstappen was to start on mediums, it could cost him, the place to Hamilton even, which is why these drivers probably start on the softs anyways, right? So except also for the performance. But yeah, then we had some thoughts, right? We were like, wow, we were all calculating with the scenario that is Verstappen going to get Lando down to turn 1? Is Lando going to get him? And then what's going to happen? But nobody thought Russell is going to lead the race. We had no idea, and we were all for it, right? Like it was, wow, well, something unexpected happened. So we were thinking, okay, is Verstappen going to just, because we have DRS on second lap, is he just going to absolutely annihilate him into turn 1?
Yeah.
What's going to happen, right? And let's talk about that move, right? Because it was not many laps, because GP, engineer of Verstappen was going onto the radio saying, now is your best chance to overtake and to manage your tires after, right? Because the Red Bull by no means was quicker than the Mercedes. It was clear. And so we were thinking, right, okay, he has DRS, he's creeping in, but nowhere near what we're used to, the rocket ship that always just, finishes the move even before the straight ends. And then Russell, for some reason, I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, it was a bit of an overreaction. I mean, Verstappen, of course, he's famous for his dive bombs. But turn 1, it's always pretty beneficial to be around, on the outside of the line. You can always figure something out on the outside, but he just cut across to the inside like so aggressively that it cost him. And then Verstappen could do the same thing. He could just brake late, as he does, and he just went into the lead without any big hesitation. So
yeah, and I know I agree. It was kind of, and you could see sparks flying off of Russell's car. I genuinely think that he was probably still a little shaken from the fact that he did a triple overtake into the first corner in a way, and I think he just really wanted to protect the track position. And I think he just kind of misjudged the situation a little bit. Of course, it cost him the place, but that's what happens. But he did hold on onto P2 for a bit longer, of course. Then we saw that beautiful fight between him and Lando that lasted, quite a big portion of the lap. They were just wheel to wheel.
After switchback.
It was
amazing,
beautiful. But yeah, Lando not getting past George, as fast as he could, probably cost him the victory, maybe. Of course, because as GP told Max, it was key that he made the move as soon as possible, because of course the track, you want to keep your tires for as long as possible. We saw alternating tire strategies later on, of course, with the hards and the soft. Then we saw that the soft, medium, and soft strategy paid off more. But yeah, it was the start. The start was very exciting.
What was not so exciting, perhaps for the Ferrari fans, was the moment. And the moment was exactly between Mr. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, the home hero, by the way,
home hero,
who had a really solid pace the whole weekend, and they had an incident. Which was a lot more than incident, because, with these two, the relationship they have, you would expect them to kind of just solve it and move on pretty quickly, but they were both very vocal about the fact that, Sainz was saying that, Charles is crying all the time pretty much. Then Charles was saying that it was an unfair move, and what is he doing? What is he figuring out? And why is he figuring something spectacular here? He's not the one to be doing it too. So, yep, that was a lot of drama. And it was a weird incident also, right? Because it felt like, because Sainz was closing in on Leclerc, it looked like he had the pace, but I still think at that stage of the race they were managing the tires. And Sainz was saying, let's push, because we have the new tires, and the guys in front probably have, Mercedes for sure had older tires.
Yeah.
The scrub set. But, he made the move. He tried to make it, around the outside. And he turned in like Leclerc was not there. Like, sure, do it to someone who's in a different team. But if you're battling a teammate, you have to leave extra space. Yeah. Mainly when you're in Ferrari, because you don't want to be in this situation, right? Like, as we mentioned, Red Bull is finishing only high up with one driver. They have the opportunity to actually steal the, Constructors' Championship.
Yeah.
And they cannot be doing this because Leclerc was having damage. Like, even though it was minor, he still had damage, and it could probably cost him P4 because he was closing in on Russell in the later stages where the strategies differed. But it was a super weird incident. And I feel like the pressure to Carlos Sainz is just starting to get there a little bit. Maybe the home crowd was getting to him a little bit.
No, that's what Charles Leclerc said, right?
Yeah.
And it really was it wasn't nice to see, of course. Of course, also as a Ferrari fan, seeing them, there are still some memories of, for example, what was it, Brazil 2019, where Leclerc and Vettel crashed each other out.
Yep.
That wasn't great. No, but these two, I feel like this season it's really amped up, and I think that's for multiple reasons. First, of course, Sainz being out of contract at the end of the season, being replaced by Lewis Hamilton for 2025, and also Ferrari being more competitive, as the car being better than at the start of last year, for example. And yeah, that we already saw this at the start of the season. We saw that overtake in Bahrain. That Sainz going around the outside, I think it was, and then they and there was some fighting in between the two camps of the Ferrari fans as well. We've talked about this before, but Sainz winning in Australia, then so it was like, oh yeah, you fired the wrong driver, and then Leclerc fans just saying, oh yeah, well, you're out of contract, you're gonna be at Williams or whatever. But I feel like
which probably will happen.
Which probably will happen, but never know what Williams will pull up with. But
hopefully not Latifi.
yeah, but it really got a little more intense this race, especially because, like, yeah, you would expect them to fight in the race, get heated on the radio, but then post race that they would, like understand, talk it out. But even in the interviews that they gave, there was some pretty spicy stuff being said. Like, of course,
Exactly.
Charles said, "Oh yeah, like he wanted to do something spectacular for the home crowd. He's out of contract." And Sainz said, "Oh yeah, Charles always complaining," and it's I just
Tension.
I hope that
A lot of
I
tension.
hope that when they look at it, when they go over it, they can figure something out. And I really hope that it doesn't turn into, I don't know, either Sainz going rogue and ignoring whatever his engineer tells him because he's out of contract, or Charles Leclerc just wanting to prove that he's number one and whatever. I just hope that they can figure it out and that they don't crash into each other and that they, go and take the fight to Red Bull in the constructors.
Yeah. Would you say it's possible that the fight between these two Ferrari drivers is so vocal also because, Frederic Vasseur is maybe on the more laid back side in terms of the, team principal management, at least on the public level, right? We don't know the internal things. But if you compare him to, let's say, Mattia Binotto, would you say that if it was Binotto in his seat right now, like instead of Vasseur, would you say he would be wagging a finger at these two saying, you better guys not tell anything bad about each other in front of the press and media? Would you say it would be the case, as we have seen the Silverstone famous finger wagging at Leclerc saying, you better not say anything bad about Ferrari, that we gave you hard tires before the end of the race?
No, I don't think that that's the case. I think that, Vasseur is more laid back, but I think that definitely after the interviews that he would have sat down with the both of them and he'd be like, okay, guys, like you guys need to figure this out. Like we can't have you talking shit about each other on national television or whatever. Like the media, the Italian newspapers, they will go crazy. But I think that Vasseur, that he has to realize, and he's very competent, he has to realize that this can't bring anything good, apart from healthy competition. But at this level, it can't. That they need to manage, and I think I trust that he's capable of dealing with this. But yeah, only time will tell.
Time will tell, exactly. And I think that also another thing that confirms a little bit the frustration of Sainz and the kind of home crowd pressure was the fact when Hamilton, he went a little bit longer in his stint, so he got undercut by Sainz, and because Russell was the first one to pull the plug on the pit stop, and then we had Hamilton versus Sainz. Hamilton, just faked a dummy on the outside, and then he switched it to the inside, and it looked like Carlos Sainz didn't leave much room again. He tried to force Hamilton on the dirty side of the track, and I'm not gonna say the same happened, but a similar, I think it was a really good move from Hamilton.
Yeah.
I think there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. And even I'm happy the FIA was very consistent with this one, saying, no investigation necessary. It was just a move. He left not much space, and Hamilton just went through, had the inside, had the corner, turned in, didn't understeer into him, and just went. And then Sainz was so frustrated. He was very upset on the radio, you could hear it. So it was, a race of many emotions.
Yeah. And it was just also unnecessary, right? Because it was between Leclerc and Sainz. It was for P5, of course. But on the other hand, what gives me hope is that just 2 races ago in Monaco, we saw some amazing teamwork. Sainz was doing some beautiful supporting for Leclerc, trying to cover everybody off, trying to prevent the free pit stop, and that wasn't that long ago. So I think that goes to show that they are capable of this. They just, and of course that was for the win, so it's more serious. But here, they just
maybe Sainz expected the same, the return of the favor. But yeah, I mean, even if Leclerc let him through, he wouldn't even probably have a chance of a podium.
Yeah.
Like, to be real. And mainly after what strategy was, the deciding factor, right? Like with Sainz also, he pitted, it was a two-stop, right? And we had a little bit differing strategies for Russell and Sainz. Because, I mean, for me, the predicted, I don't know, strategy was soft, medium, soft, or soft, soft, medium. That's what Perez did, I believe. Or maybe he had hards towards the end, something like this. But Sainz put on hards earlier on. So did Russell, which, we knew the hard tire was not the best in terms of the pace, even though Russell was quickest on the track for a second. But strategy played a huge role because we had Lando Norris, he was clearly faster than the Mercedes, so he kind of got rid of them, and then he was playing the chasing game with Verstappen. And I really liked, again, the fact when there was the radio between Norris and his engineer, and he was saying, look, like, our window on Russell is closing. Do we box? Can we overtake him? What do we do? And he says, look, let's just go after Verstappen. Because he just, he said it even afterwards, the car was feeling amazing. And it just goes to show the confidence, right? He had the confidence in his car. In the tires, the McLaren looked like it was pretty good on his tires as well, because he could create, I don't know, it was like a 6-lap tire offset. So he had 6 laps fresher tires. And he started to reel down Verstappen fairly quickly. Unfortunately, not quick enough. And it just seems like a missed opportunity for McLaren. Yet again, it's a race they probably should have won. And the same as Canada, because they had the pace. In Canada, they were in the lead. But yeah, just shows, I hate to say it, but I still think Verstappen made the difference today.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think this past few races, they have been very, very good. Let's remember last year or the year before. And I really think that we have a pretty good season on our hands also going forward, because these teams, they are catching up. McLaren is in the faster car in some ways right now. There is a possibility of a title fight. I'm not saying that Max Verstappen is not going to win the World Championship. That would be premature. And we know that, he's been through a title battle before and he came out on top. We know that he can work under pressure. He has 3 World Championships under his belt. And of course, Lando Norris can take the fight to him. But I'm just not that sure if Lando is on that level of everything aligning, yet with the pressure, the confidence, the car working properly. But yeah, I might be wrong about that. But I definitely think that we're in for a good rest of the season.
100%. And I'm just super excited because look, like, the race, it probably wasn't a 5-star race, but geez, it was exciting. Like, it was fun to watch. You didn't know the outcome. Like, even if Verstappen was in the lead, you still were not 100% sure he's going to win, because you had, Norris charging with his newer tires. And we're at the start of a triple header. So it's going to be pretty insane, because we have really good tracks coming up as well. We have Austria, and then I think it's Silverstone, right?
Exactly.
And both of the tracks, I think, are going to be very good for McLaren as well. Because historically, Austria has been, and Lando said it himself, Austria and Silverstone are his favorite tracks.
Yep.
And McLaren, that's exactly where McLaren, broke the curse with the big upgrades last year. They just chucked on a huge amount of downforce, balance. It just clicked. It worked. And Lando had a great race at Austria and a great race at Silverstone. So, even though, like, many people are going to be upset that Verstappen won, which he won for 61st time, but I still think it's hugely different to how he was winning last year.
Yeah, that's
he could have started P15 and we already knew, so we were just playing bets when he was gonna go to P1, not if, but when.
Exactly.
Which, it's super exciting, refreshing, and I think that Formula One is going to have a lot of new and happy fans, hopefully.
Yeah. And even if you look back at the start of this season, like we were pretty pessimistic about the competitive. We were saying, oh yeah, Ferrari, they might be doing something, they might be second, but oh yeah, Mercedes, nowhere, McLaren, yeah, maybe. Now everything's changed. We're looking forward to every race, but if you're not a Ferrari fan, of course, over the last two race weekends hasn't been the greatest, and the triple header on our hands, yeah, I don't know if I will survive mentally stable, but we'll see.
We hope you will. And right now, just to remind our fans, if anyone's watching, and just in general, just to kind of think for ourselves, it's 69 points from the lead of Verstappen to second place Norris. And one kind of big thing that was not talked about a lot, but a lot of people know, is that Verstappen took his last engine.
Yeah, that is
right?
true.
And I believe Norris is doing very well with his engine. So even though, sure, the title, it might be settled, or there is a clear favorite at least, but I think there's still a lot to come. It was race 10, I think, and you still have 14 races to go, and Verstappen is definitely not going to last with his third engine for 14 races. So a penalty is incoming, and it's going to be probably a big one. He's going to start from the back, and we're just going to see, and it's where everything could turn over.
Yeah.
You never know, and that's so exciting about F1.
Or a DNF, right? One DNF.
True.
Bad
one DNF,
contact. Yeah.
One penalty. It's, we know that Lando Norris is capable of delivering when he has the good car, even though this weekend, probably a tough pill to swallow for him for missed opportunities, but I still think he's one of the few drivers that would be able to really challenge Verstappen if he has the car.
Yeah.
So, and let's move on to a surprise that happened. We're going to talk about it pretty briefly, but Alpine.
I was just about to say, we have to honorable mention Alpine.
Yeah.
9th and
insane. Exactly. Even qualifying performance, they outqualified and outraced the Aston Martins.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year, I would have laughed in your face. Alpine was plumb last.
Yeah.
And we had a special guest in the paddock of Flavio Briatore. And you know who that is, right? He's the famous person of the scandal of 2008 where there was the famous Crashgate where Nelson Piquet was instructed to crash at a certain point to benefit a certain Fernando Alonso as his teammate, who then had, safety car. He was in the prime position to win, and the rest is history, but it looks like Alpine are turning their fortunes around. And do you think that, with this pace, look, it's Spain. They showed that their upgrades are starting to work. They had a really good upward trajectory, and Aston Martin is absolutely lost. Do you think that Alpine could finish ahead of Aston Martin in the championship at the end of the season?
Well, I'm not sure what the point difference is right now. Probably fairly big, but I mean, just 3 or 4 races ago, Alpine were happy about a single point score. Remember, we were making fun of them they were crashing into each other. Esteban Ocon was getting reprimanded. He's leaving Alpine at the end of the year, so they were in shambles.
It's 50 points difference in the standings.
I'll be optimistic for Aston Martin here and say that sooner or later they will figure something out. Probably not something on the same level as they did at the start of last year when they were second fastest. But yeah, probably something to get them back in front of Alpine. And if not, then I don't think Lawrence Stroll going to be happy at all.
100% agree with you. So props to Alpine. And now let's move on to our predictions to
Yeah.
see how badly we probably screwed up, because we kind of did.
Yeah. No, we were both kind of optimistic for kind of a FIBA-mate unity. And I, for one, predicted a Red Bull double podium. So optimistic, I said, oh yeah, Checo is gonna have a good weekend for one. Well, thank you, Checo, for not giving me my point. But your prediction was much better.
It was, but it wasn't enough, unfortunately. I predicted double McLaren podium, didn't I?
Yeah.
And yeah, unfortunately, Piastri, he had a little bit of an unfortunate qualifying Q3. He had the pace. I still believe he had the pace. But yeah, he didn't finish his lap. He started kind of, towards the back of the pack. And yeah, couldn't recover ever since. So a shame. But we had 3 different teams on the podium, which counts for something. And again, just proves the point that it's going to become very interesting. So,
but what about the Austrian Grand Prix? What is your wild take?
My bold prediction is that Red Bull will not be on the podium.
Damn. That is...
I know it's their strong track. It's one of the strong tracks, but I still believe McLaren is going to have a very solid weekend in there. And I think that Mercedes and Ferrari are not going to have a bad weekend as well, because they've proved to be quick on the straights. They were, like Ferrari, we know, is quick in the technical sections usually. So we'll see. But what about you? What's your wild prediction?
I will go the other way round, and I will say that in Austria, we will not see Lando Norris on the podium. I know.
Wow.
I know. He's been doing very good, but I don't know. I'm just feeling maybe Piastri, maybe Mercedes, maybe the Ferraris, Max Verstappen, but I think that he will miss out.
That's a bold take as well, because it's his favorite track, one of his favorites. Well, we'll have to wait and find out. And before we go, I think we need to look at our driver of the weekend. So, who do you have, Tonda?
Well, I think we've said him before, but I really think that lately it's been more him than the car, and proving to be that good. I will say Max Verstappen.
I'll have to agree, and I have the same driver of the weekend. He did a stellar job, and he proved that it's not only the machine, it has to be always the man and the machine and the team who have done incredible pit stops.
Yeah.
Incredible strategy.
Yeah, Hannah Schmidt.
Yeah, cooking again. And I think we need to introduce something new to this channel. And it will only be fair that I thought we would pick the driver of the weekend who would, it's usually somebody from the top 5 teams, right?
Yeah.
So we have to pick, top 5. Are we counting Aston Martin, really? Let's say top 4 and the rest. And, we will pick our driver of the weekend who is from the bottom of the field. Let's say the rest of the world, how we used to call it.
The rest of the world.
Exactly. It's the Formula 1.5 in this case.
Well, who's your pick then for the Spanish Grand Prix?
For me, it's Pierre Gasly. He, with the Alpine, he did great things. I believe he outqualified Ocon. He outraced Ocon. He did an incredible job, I believe, with the car he has. And we also know that he has been kind of vocal about the car not kind of fitting him and that they're going in the wrong directions. And we know the Alpine was very difficult to drive. So who would you go for?
Actually, just because they've been doing so badly up until now, just this once I will agree with you that, maybe they will be as good as to join the top 4. Who knows? Maybe they will start outscoring Ferrari. Well, I don't even want to say that, but yeah, I will.
You better not jinx it.
But we also need to, let's give our rating of the weekend. What would
Sure.
you rate
So-
the Spanish Grand Prix out of 10?
Out of 10, I think it was a 7 for me.
Yeah.
I think it had everything a Spanish Grand Prix should. You know, because we have the improved chicane, the deleted chicane, we had the last two corners kind of deleted and improved, so which improved racing quite a bit. We did not have as many overtakes as we probably would have wanted to.
Yeah.
Maybe if Lando would not, struggle with the strategy, it would be more interesting to see on-track battle actually with Norris and Verstappen, which we really haven't seen much, and I'm all for it. But it was a great race. What would you rate it?
No, I was gonna say the same thing. Really looks like we're on the same page today about this weekend.
We are.
But
Seems
who
like
knows?
we are. Maybe
What
we
do-
won't next week.
Exactly.
We'll see.
And we hope that you will tune in into the Final Straight F1 podcast to hear all about the Austrian Grand Prix as well. And until then, have a good one. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time. Tune in for our wild predictions as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. Take care. Bye.
Bye.